I found the seating chart for my wife's VP dinner, tucked inside the front pocket of her laptop bag. My name wasn't on it. Her ex-boyfriend's name was. Right there at table 2, in the seat next to her father, while she gave her acceptance speech that Friday night, I was sitting in a storage unit, 2 miles away, going through bank records I'd printed that morning. What I found in those records ended 22 years of marriage, and something much worse than that. My name is Bo Hollister. I'm 47 years old. I own 3 physical therapy clinics in the metro area. Started the first one 16 years ago, in a strip mall between a nail salon and a dry cleaner. Not glamorous. Nobody writes magazine profiles about guys who help people walk again after knee replacements or get their shoulder range of motion back after surgery. But it's honest work. And I built something real. 3 locations, 11 full-time therapists, a patient base that keeps growing. Because when you fix someone's rotator cuff the right way, they send you their whole family. I married my wife 22 years ago. She was finishing her MBA. I was 2 years into the first clinic, and convinced that if I just kept showing up and doing good work, everything else would eventually fall into place. She was smart, driven, the kind of woman who read industry earnings, reports the way other people read novels. She went into healthcare software sales, the companies that sell records management systems to hospital networks. She's good at it. Her company, MedLogic Solutions, has been flying her to conferences in Phoenix and Chicago and Boston for years. Last spring, they offered her a promotion, VP of Business Development. New title, significant raise, a team under her instead of just a territory. I was proud of her. Or I thought I was. Until I found out she hadn't planned on telling me about the celebration dinner until after it happened. I found the seating chart on a Tuesday. I was looking for a parking validation card she'd mentioned was in her bag. We'd gone to the same parking garage the week before, and she had the extra card. The chart fell out when I unzipped the front pocket. Cream cardstock, MedLogic Solutions letterhead. VP, promotion dinner, November 12th, the Whitmore Room at the Henderson Hotel. I spread it open on the kitchen counter. Table 2. Her father, her mother, her brother and his wife. And there, in the second seat from the right, where I would have expected to see my own name, Cruz Devlin. I stood there for a long time. Long enough that the coffee I just poured got cold next to me. My wife came downstairs. 20 minutes later, she saw me standing at the counter and stopped moving. "Morning," she said. "Too careful. The way you say good morning to someone when you're not sure what they know." I held up the seating chart without saying anything. Her face did something complicated. Not quite guilt, and not quite defiance. Somewhere between them, cycling through 2 or 3 expressions, before settling on a version of composed. "How did you?" "Wrong bag," I said. "Who's Cruz Devlin?" She set her travel mug down on the counter. "He's consulting with us. Has been for about 8 months. Healthcare strategy, market positioning. He's helped MedLogic a lot with the expansion." "That's not what I asked." She crossed her arms. 22 years, and I knew exactly what that meant. It meant she was about to say something she knew I wasn't going to like. "He's someone I dated before we met. Graduate school. It was brief." I looked back at the chart. His name, where mine should have been. Her parents on either side of the gap I wasn't filling. "And your parents invited him, instead of me." My mother suggested the seating arrangement. "And you went along with it." She turned toward the window. Outside, a neighbor was loading groceries into her car, living a normal Tuesday. You know how my dad gets at corporate events. He's very particular about the environment. He thinks Cruz speaks the same language. The enterprise side, the software world, investment positioning. "I'm in healthcare," I said. "I know you are. 3 clinics. Licensed therapists. I've been working in healthcare for 16 years. "That's not what I meant." Her jaw got tight. My dad just finds Cruz easier to talk to at these things. He understands the business landscape in a different way. Running physical therapy clinics isn't exactly. She stopped herself, but not fast enough. The rest of that sentence hung there between us anyway. "Let me make sure I have this right," I said, keeping my voice level. "Your parents like your ex-boyfriend more than your husband. And instead of telling them that wasn't acceptable, you agreed to it and didn't mention any of this to me. You just let me find out by accident. I was going to tell you. When? Friday night, when you got home and I asked how the party was. She didn't answer that. The worst part isn't that. You didn't fight for me, I said. It's that you assumed I wouldn't care enough to push back. I handed her the seating chart, walked past her, and drove to my east side location. The morning rush gave me something to do. Patient intake, scheduling coverage gaps, a delivery of resistance bands that had been back-ordered for 3 weeks. I went through the motions. In between, I was thinking about Cruz Devlin's name, printed in my spot, about the fact that my wife had known about this dinner, for however long it takes to plan a dinner, and had decided silence was the easier option. Around noon, I called my accountant. His name is Sid Pruitt. He's been doing my books since I opened the first location, back when my accounting software was a spreadsheet I updated by hand every Sunday night. 63 now, precise the way some people are naturally, and others spend careers trying to be. Sid, I said, I need you to pull something. What am I looking at? Joint account activity. Mine and my wife's. Full 2 years. Checking, savings. The investment accounts we opened when my father's estate settled. A pause. That's a lot of paper, Bo. I know. Pull it anyway. And anything that looks off, large withdrawals, transfers I wouldn't have authorized, unusual memo lines, flag it. Another pause. Longer. Sid had been married for 37 years. He knew what this kind of request meant without needing it explained. I'll have it for you by Thursday. Keep it between us. Always do. I hung up and went back to work. There was something else I kept coming back to. About 8 months ago, right around the time Cruz Devlin apparently started consulting with MedLogic, I lost 2 corporate wellness contracts I'd had for years, a regional insurance company and a mid-sized law firm downtown, both of which had been routing employees to my clinics for post-injury rehabilitation and preventive care. Gone within 6 weeks of each other, both of them going to a new operation called Apex Rehab Studios. Slicker branding, aggressive pricing, almost identical service model to mine. I'd written it off as the market getting more competitive. Standing in my supply room on Tuesday afternoon, counting resistance bands, I wasn't writing it off anymore. Sid called Thursday morning at 8. You need to come in. No preamble. That's how I knew it was bad. I was at his office by 9. He had papers spread across his conference table in careful stacks. Bank statements, wire transfer records, copies of withdrawal slips he'd requested from the bank directly. Walk me through it, I said. He pointed to the first stack. Joint savings. You had $215,000 in there. The inheritance from your father, plus what you'd been accumulating from the clinics. That was your retirement cushion. Was. 14 months ago, your wife withdrew $62,000. The memo line reads, Investment Portfolio Reallocation. Your signature is on the withdrawal form. I looked at the form. That was my signature, or a very careful copy of it. I didn't sign this, Sid. He nodded. There are 2 more. He slid another paper across. 8 months ago, $57,000. Same story, your signature. No record of any conversation between the 2 of you about it. Then 5 months ago, $49,000. I sat back in the chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. How much is left? $47,000. $168,000. Gone. Where did it go? He handed me a wire transfer summary. 3 transfers, all to the same account. Devlin Wellness Ventures LLC. Cruz. I held that paper for a moment. Just held it. There's more, Sid said, quietly. His voice was careful in the way people's voices get when they're telling you something they wish they didn't have to say. My business accounts. Someone's been accessing your clinic management software after hours. Not moving money directly. Pulling reports. Patient acquisition cost analyses. Vendor contracts. Insurance reimbursement breakdowns. Pricing models across all 3 locations. Everything a person would need to know to build a competing practice from scratch. He folded his hands. The access logs show it happening in the evenings. 9, 10 o'clock. When I'm usually in bed. My wife is listed as co-owner, on the business accounts. For tax purposes. Administrator-level access to the accounting platform. He slid one more document across the table. I pulled the business registration for Apex Rehab Studios, the one that took your contracts. I already knew what I was going to see. Principal investor, Devlin Wellness Ventures LLC, registered 11 months ago. Cruz wasn't just consulting with my wife's company. He'd been using intelligence, pulled from my clinics, to build a competitor, and using my retirement savings to fund it. And my wife had been the one letting him in. I sat in Sid's office for a while after that, not saying much. Outside the window, Thursday was going on normally. People walking to their cars, a food truck parked on the corner doing lunch business. All of it completely indifferent to the fact that my entire understanding of the last 2 years had just been restructured. What do I do? I asked. Sid looked at me over his reading glasses. Legally, you document everything and you retain an attorney today. Personally. He paused. You decide whether you fight or whether you walk away. But if you walk, you do it smart. You protect yourself first. You don't leave anything behind that can hurt you later. I drove home. The house was empty. My wife was at the office, probably sitting across a conference table from Cruz Devlin, reviewing quarterly projections, entirely unconcerned. I went through our storage area in the garage. 4 boxes of old paperwork, tax returns, insurance files, documents from the early years of the business. I wasn't sure what I was looking for until I found it. A birthday card, rubber banded to a stack of notebooks from her MBA program. The card was dated 9 years into our marriage. A mountain lodge, a weekend she'd told me was a work retreat. Inside, in handwriting I didn't recognize. Same spot, same time of year. You know I'll keep showing up as long as you want me to. Signed, Cruz. That was the weekend she'd told me. She'd be in a team strategy session. 3 states away. I sat on the garage floor with that card in my hand and felt something settle. Not rage. Something colder and clearer than that. Perfect clarity, the kind that comes when you stop hoping you're wrong. She'd been lying since before we were married. She'd just gotten so comfortable with it that she'd gotten careless. That was her mistake. I spent Friday morning making calls. First one went to Sid. Transfer my half of the joint accounts to my personal business account. Everything. Do it today. That's going to trigger alerts, Bo. I know. Do it anyway. And pull my name off every joint authorization. Credit cards, utilities, anywhere we're both listed. By end of business. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Second call went to an attorney named Vivian Bates. I'd met her twice at chamber events. Knew her by reputation. Family law, fraud cases, sharp and unhurried. I explained what I had. Come in at 10, she said. I spent 2 hours in her office. Laid out the bank records, the forged signatures, the wire transfers into Devlin Wellness Ventures, the software access logs, the timeline of my contracts disappearing in lockstep with Cruz's competing studio opening. Vivian took notes without blinking. When I finished, she sat back. File separation papers Monday, she said. Don't tell her it's coming. The moment she knows, assets move and narratives get built. You hit first, you hit with documentation, and you hit before she has time to prepare a story. She looked at me. What about tonight? Her dinner's at 7. Are you going to confront her there? I thought about it. The image of walking into that hotel ballroom, finding table 2, watching Cruz Devlin look up from the seat that had my name on it. Part of me wanted that scene. The part that had been awake since Tuesday, rehearsing things I could say. No, I said. I'm not giving them a public confrontation to use as a narrative. I'm going to be somewhere quiet, doing paperwork. Vivian smiled. That's the right call. I left her office at noon. Back at the main clinic, my office manager, Pell, he'd been with me for 9 years, managed day-to-day operations at 2 of the 3 locations, flagged me down before I got to my desk. Boss. I need to tell you something. He was uncomfortable in the way people are when they've been sitting on informations they weren't sure was their place to share. Apex Rehab called me about 6 weeks ago. Recruiting call. Offered me 30% more than I make here. He looked at me directly. I told them no, but I'm telling you because they knew my exact salary. Knew what I made down to the dollar. That's in the payroll system, I said. Right. Which I can't access from outside the network. But someone with admin-level login credentials could. I put my hand on his shoulder. Thanks for telling me, pal. And thanks for saying no to them. Didn't even consider it, he said. Just wanted you to know. That pipeline, I told him, had been shut down. I spent the afternoon doing normal Friday close procedures at the Riverside location. At 5:30, I packed 2 suitcases and a box from the house. Clothes, my laptop. Important documents. What 22 years comes down to when you're being honest about it. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. Then I drove to a storage unit I'd rented 2 weeks earlier under my business name. Small, 10 by 10, concrete floor and fluorescent light, and transferred everything there. The backup drive with copies of every financial record, Sid's folder with the highlighted bank statements, my own notebook where I'd been cross-referencing dates. Then I checked into the hotel I'd booked that morning. Extended stay month to month, a room with a kitchenette and no questions asked. I ordered room service, watched part of a game I had no investment in, fell asleep before 10. It was the best night's sleep I'd had in weeks. Because the worst part, the uncertainty, the suspecting, the quietly hoping I was misreading everything, was behind me now, I knew. And knowing meant I could act. My phone had buzzed at 7:15, with a text from Harper, my daughter. She was in her junior year at the state university, 4 hours away, studying pre-med. She called every Sunday evening without being asked. The text said, "Dad, can we talk tonight? Something's been on my mind." I'd stared at it. Harper always responded immediately to messages. She didn't send something vague and then go quiet. I called her Saturday morning at 6:30, before my wife had a chance to. She answered on the first ring. "Dad, are you okay? I called the house last night and nobody picked up." "I'm okay. Talk to me." She told me that her grandmother had called her the week before, going on about the VP promotion dinner, how proud everyone was. And she'd mentioned Cruz Davlin, said she was glad he and her mother were working together again. Said it like Harper was supposed to already know who he was, like it was established information. The way she said it, Harper told me, it was like everyone knew except you. "How long have you been thinking something was wrong?" "A few months." Mom seemed off, distracted, secretive. I thought it was promotion pressure. But then Grandma called and I couldn't stop connecting things. A pause. "Dad, is she cheating on you?" "More than that," I said. Harper was quiet for a moment. "Then, what are you going to do?" "Handle it legally, the right way." "I want to come home." "Not yet. Let me get through the first part. You keep your head in your classes and let me do my end. Can you do that?" A long breath. "Yeah. Okay, then. Dad, whatever story gets told about this, whatever version comes out of her side, I know who you are. I've always known who you are." When my wife called at 7:45 Saturday morning, I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Where are you?" Her voice was careful, controlled. "Does it matter right now?" "Of course it matters. You left without saying anything. I came home and you were just gone. Your things were gone." "How was the dinner?" A pause. "Bo, did Cruz enjoy sitting next to your mother?" Longer pause. "If this is about the seating arrangement." "It's not about the seating arrangement. It's about 168,000. Complete silence. I could picture the color draining out of her face. "I don't know what." "Devlin Wellness Ventures. The LLC you've been wiring our retirement savings into for the past 14 months. Cruz used it to open Apex Rehab Studios, the place that's been undercutting my corporate contracts because someone handed him my pricing structure, my vendor agreements, my patient acquisition models. I kept my voice level. Rinse that someone had administrator access to my clinic software. The access logs show logins from your credentials. After 9 p.m., 17 separate times over 11 months. She wasn't talking. The withdrawal slips have my signature on them. I didn't sign them. That's identity theft. That's wire fraud. My attorney filed a referral to the DA this morning, and I'm being served with my own separation papers on Monday. You went to an attorney. Barely a whisper. I went to an attorney. Monday you'll be served. The civil suit against Cruz's LLC gets filed this week. And Vivian Bates is very clear about what the DA is likely to do with forged signatures and documented wire transfers. Please. Her voice broke. Please don't do this. Come home. We can talk through this. I made a mistake. I know I made a mistake, but you can't just. You made 18 months of mistakes, Kristen. Each one with my signature on it. She was crying now. What about Harper? Harper already knows. She called me this morning. You know what she said? I paused. She said she's on my side. Because even a 21-year-old could see what was happening. You stop being careful. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought it was just an investment. Cruz said we'd both profit, that you'd never find out. She didn't deny it. There's one thing I need you to hear clearly, I said. I don't hate you. I don't have the energy for it. But I'm done. With the marriage, with the pretending, with waking up every morning next to someone who was running a scheme against me while I slept. You want Cruz? You can have him. But you don't get my money, my business reputation, and my dignity in the same deal. I hung up before she could answer. She called back immediately. I declined it. Then a text. Please, I love you. We can fix this. I read it once. Then I blocked her number and called Harper. She texted you. Harper said when she picked up. Not a question. She'll call you next. I know. I'm not answering. A pause. Are you okay, Dad? Like actually okay? Getting there. Good. Her voice steadied. Don't let her make you feel guilty about protecting yourself. That's the thing she'll try. She'll make it about you being too harsh, too quick, not giving her a chance. Don't fall for it. When did you get so smart? I've been watching you run a business since I was 6, she said. Some of it stuck. The separation papers were filed Monday morning. By noon, she'd been served at the MedLogic office. What happened after that moved faster than I expected. Vivian referred the fraud case to the DA's office with a complete evidence package. 3 weeks in, she called me with something else. I had an investigator run background on Cruz Devlin, she said. Come in. There was a civil lawsuit from Nevada. 3 years ago, a former business partner had sued Cruz for fraud and misappropriation. He'd gained access to the man's financial records through a personal connection inside the business, then used that information to compete against him with capital he'd extracted from joint accounts. It had settled quietly for an undisclosed amount. He's done this before, I said. At least twice that we can document. The MO is almost identical each time. He identifies a business owner's spouse, establishes a professional relationship, extracts business intelligence, then opens a competing operation funded with money that isn't his. I sat with that for a moment. My wife wasn't running this. She was being run. That's one interpretation. It doesn't eliminate her legal liability, but it's one the DA is factoring into his offer. The DA offered Kristen a plea, 1 count of fraud, 2 years probation, full restitution of the $168,000. She took it. MedLogic terminated her employment when the charges became public record. The VP title was gone within 2 weeks of the filing. Cruz Devlin did not get a plea offer. 4 counts of fraud, 2 counts of identity theft. The Nevada victim resurfaced. Cruz had stopped making settlement payments after the 3rd installment and simply vanished. There was an outstanding warrant. The judge factored it all in. 5 years. Apex Rehab Studios closed a month after his indictment. The 2 corporate clients they'd taken from me didn't have anywhere else to go on short notice. Both of them called Pell directly. Both came back. The divorce finalized 4 months after I filed. Kristen didn't fight much. She had other things to deal with. A restitution schedule, the wreckage of a career, a family that had no idea who to be angry at. I got the house. I kept the clinics. I got a civil judgment against Cruz that I'll probably never fully collect. But I wasn't thinking about collecting anymore. His name was in the public record. Every hospital network, every insurance company, every rehab facility in this metro area knew exactly who Cruz Devlin was and what he'd built and how he'd built it. 7 months after the divorce, I opened the 4th location. Bigger space than the others. Better equipment. The Northside neighborhood I'd been scouting for 3 years, but never had the bandwidth to execute. While I was trying to hold everything else together. The grand opening was on a Saturday. Harper drove down the night before. She worked the front desk for 6 hours straight, wearing the clinic polo shirt and telling every patient who walked in that her dad had been open for 16 years, and she personally guaranteed the quality. The front desk staff thought she was the best thing that had ever happened to that lobby. That afternoon, while we were restocking the intake area, she said, "Dad, the woman from the bakery across the street has been looking over here all day." I looked through the front window. Across 4 lanes of traffic, a woman in a white apron was arranging the window display of the bakery on the corner. Dark hair, confident movements. The kind of person who knows what they're doing and isn't performing the fact that they know. She glanced up, caught me looking, and smiled before turning back to the display. "She dropped a card off at the front desk an hour ago," Harper said. She slid it across the counter. The front read, "Alicia Morse, Morse and Crumb Bakery." On the back, in neat handwriting, "Congrats on the new location. If you ever want to talk about a cross-promotion, your patience. My pastries, I'm right across the street." Her cell number was at the bottom. "She's being a smart businesswoman," I said. Harper looked at me the way only a 21-year-old who's watched her father go through the worst year of his life can look at someone. She wrote her cell number on the back of a business card and walked it across 4 lanes of traffic. "Dad, that's not a partnership inquiry." I put the card in my pocket. "I'll think about it. You said you'd think about calling the insurance broker for 2 months, and then he retired and you had to start over. Stop thinking so much." I laughed. First real laugh I'd had in a while. That evening, after the last patient left and Harper drove back to campus, I sat in my new office going through the opening day numbers. They were good. Better than the first week at any of my other 3 locations. The North Side neighborhood was going to work. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. "Saw the announcement about the new location. Congratulations. You've always deserved better than what you got. K." I read it once. I understood what it cost her to send it. I thought about whether it changed anything. Then I deleted it without answering, because there's a difference between forgiving someone and reopening a door that was closed for good reason. I pulled Alicia Morse's card out of my pocket. I looked at those 10 digits for a long moment. Then I typed, "Hey, it's Bo from the therapy clinic across the street. I'd love to talk about that cross-promotion idea. Are you free this week?" 3 dots appeared. "Then Thursday? I close at 6. "Thursday's perfect," I wrote back. I set the phone on my desk and looked around the office. Harper's photo on the wall, one from last Thanksgiving, just the 2 of us, at the kitchen table, laughing at something I can't remember. Both of us, clearly in the middle of rebuilding something. 4 business licenses in frames, above the filing cabinet, each one with my name on it. A life I'd built piece by piece over 16 years, that no one had been able to take from me because the parts that mattered weren't in any joint account. I was 47 years old, newly divorced, 4 locations in, and sitting in a room that smelled like fresh drywall and possibility. My wife had put everything she had into a man who'd run this exact scheme at least twice before and would have kept running it until someone stopped him. She lost everything she'd been reaching for. I'd put everything I had into my own name on my own lease. The 4th location was open, and Thursday was 3 days away.